We're going to open it up for questions, and first question I believe we have is from Jason Becker. Right? Chris, you have the first one? You got the microphone. Thank you.
Before we go into that,
Yeah, let me say one. You want to say it?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say before we start, there's a couple groups of people we need to thank. Number one, the fans, and I've said this over and over. This season was very complicated for the fans. From the reduced capacity at the beginning to the Mickey Chase, where the fans were incredibly responsive to, right to the very end. We do thank everybody for coming out and hope we can grow that and continue to build this experience at Comerica. The players noticed, I noticed, the staff, everybody was very appreciative to have the fans back in baseball. Secondly, I'd like to thank you guys that covered us on a day-to-day basis. It's hard. Your jobs are getting harder and harder with the lack of access and all the evolving the rules, the COVID, and certainly in my first year, I really appreciated not only the fairness but just the openness to sort of a new experience with a new manager. It doesn't go unnoticed by me. I know I missed one day of work with you guys last weekend, but I did appreciate whatever communication that we could have in a very trying year. Now we can start.
Well, first of all, I just also want to acknowledge my two new VPs and assistant GMs. Jay Sartori is here, Jay, and there he is, and Sam Menzen here, all right, and then also our new VP of Player Development is here, Ryan Garko, way back there.
This is where we're supposed to all clap.
Yay! And then also, you guys, I'm sure you get the news already that Ryan already hired a director of pitching for our minor leagues, and Mr. Rivas. All right, now we're good.
Go ahead, Chris. Okay, thank you. Appreciate you guys doing this for us too. I just might as well dive right in on the off season, and I know you're not going to lay out your agenda completely, but is it safe to say the number one priority is the shortstop, or is it more broad based than that?
I think it's more broad based than that. One player is not going to determine everything. I think we have several needs, and we'll tackle the off season. Looking at everything that would be at our disposal as far as what players we can acquire. I think pitching is very important. We've established 3 young starters right now that these guys did a great job in doing, and but because of injuries, it's set us back a little bit. The injury to Turnbull is devastating, really. I mean, if you look at it, and the injury to Boyd is a decision looming now going into the off season. So we have to address that. So those two, I look at it as important as the shortstop at this point.
How does it follow up just the catcher? How does that play into that now?
That's another area of concern. Jake Rogers was doing tremendous. AJ and Josh Paul did a great job with Jake, and we were so encouraged about the future with him in combination with Haas. And now he's not going to be able to play next year for the most part. So that also leaves us an area of concern there. Yeah.
AJ, you said it a bunch this season. You're not where you want to be. This is a process. You're not even a 500 ball club. But is that the next step, is to get to that point, or do you feel like with the right moves, with the right pieces in place, you can leapfrog that and get into that postseason conversation by this time next year?
Well, I think one leads to the other. Obviously the next goal is to get above 500, and then you can go as far above 500 as needed to get to the playoffs. So I just think you have to be above 500 to make the playoffs nowadays. It's incredible. I always talk about the race to 90 wins, and I even say that to our team, and 90 wins wouldn't have been good enough this year. And so I think it's, for us, again, today's a day where I guess I'll let you guys ask me the bigger question about win totals and big. I mean, it's not about winning the day today. I mean, unfortunately, we're not playing, but I think seeing this thirst for winning and this rebirth for doing things that a winning culture does, obviously lends itself to to looking towards 500 and above. That's the next plateau. Now, it doesn't mean we have to spend an entire year and that has to be the only accomplishment next year. I think we have to set our bar extremely high, and you should set out every year to make the playoffs. I know it's easy to say from my chair. It's the motivation that I have to have in the dugout, in the clubhouse, and no matter what the experts say or no matter what your playoff predictions are. For us, I think, winning the day turns into winning series, turns into winning months, and we want to have a winning season. We want that winning season to be rewarded with a playoff berth. And by the way, just because you get to the playoffs doesn't mean you're satisfied at that point either. I just like where our heads are at. I like that we stay grounded with what we're doing, and clearly to be a winning team that we talk about, you have to have a winning record, and we don't have that yet.
Was there more progress made in those terms this season than maybe you anticipated coming into this season to get to the point that you're even having those thoughts now?
So I think there was, it's hard to say more because I didn't set limitations on how far we could go or how much progress we could make. It was, and I was glad to hear, Chris Ilitch say this the other day that it was a year of great progress, and it was. And that was a challenge that was issued from the first meeting with Al and Chris and when I got hired, and continues to be the motivation to continue to move forward and continue to get better. The amount of progress is really dictated on what the players can absorb, what the players do. I was very pleased with the progress in all sorts of different areas. And so how high that could go, or how good that could get, or how advanced or how much we could fast forward it is really dependent upon how the players respond, and they responded in great form. I caution everybody this time of year. We talk about the reflection of last year, and there's a lot of questions about next year. This time last year, obviously I wasn't here yet, but Akil Baddoo wasn't a Tiger. Matt Manning wasn't a big leaguer. Jonathan Scope hadn't re-signed. No one knew what we were going to get out of Miguel Cabrera. Jeimer Candelario was coming off a very good season, but kind of nobody knew was it a shortened season or was it a kind of the real deal with a full season. So these questions are I know they're warranted, and we have to talk about what next year looks like. We don't really know what that looks like. What we do know is that our players are going to come with a completely different perspective than this date last year, and for that I'm very proud.
I guess this is a question for both of you guys, but with what you guys saw from Riley Green's, Torkelson in the minor leagues this year, how does that factor into your off-season planning and what you could do in the outfield and at first base? Do you guys look for placeholders there? Do you guys try to fill internally? How does that affect how you look at scope going into next year?
Yeah, well, AJ and I have talked a lot about this as far as our planning for next year. We both believe that as far as the outfield situation is concerned, I think it's probably an area where right now we feel we're okay there. We feel we have some young prospects that are really, quite frankly, are still trying to find their way in Des Cameron, Derrick Hill. Obviously he mentioned Akil Baddoo, and we have Grossman out there now, Victor Reyes. So that combination right now has worked okay for us. If there's an opportunity to capitalize on something, maybe we look at it, but right now it's not an area of concern because, to your point, well, you have Riley Green coming. You guys written plenty about him possibly making the club out of spring training. And I'm not going to comment on that. But, at some point you can count on Riley Green being in our outfield. And I'm not going to say when we think, but at some point, and in the not too far distant future. So that's an area right now that I think we'll be fine at. With Torque in the infield, obviously Cabrera, as he gets into next year and the following year, sure, he'll play a little bit of first base, and I think AJ managed that perfectly this year, and he'll manage it perfectly next year. And I told you guys last year when we brought back Scope that he's going to play first base, and you guys thought I was crazy, but he did. And he'll continue to go back to first and second. I got to tell him that.
Yeah.
So he'll continue to do that, and when Torque is ready, then obviously it'll be a better situation for us because the the good thing about Scope is he's very he's very versatile. He can play second. He can play. Actually, if we needed him to play short, he could play short. And he can play third. So it'll be a plus for us when Torkelson's ready.
Yeah, let me comment on that one. From my perspective on these young players, and I said this morning on a radio show, that was the first question I got about Tork and Green making our opening day roster, and it'd be one of 100. So now we're up to 2. You know, I will tell you, everything matters, and I've said that to our team. I've said it to you guys. Like, performance matters. There isn't free playing time, so we're gonna apply as much pressure on everybody, including ourselves, on when to make this decision, on when to open the door for everybody, on how much to call it a competition. I think the offseason will dictate some of that. I think their performance this season, you know, warranted some consideration. I think what they do next year is going to matter. You know, I'm kind of curious how they're going to respond next February when we get to camp, and now all eyes are on them, and whether or not it's going to be big drama. You guys are going to ask a lot, and I love that. I love the pressure on these guys. And then we'll see where it takes us. But everything's going to matter. And one thing that we've committed to is putting the best team on the field, and that can come in a variety of different ways. They aren't finished products yet. No matter what you do in the minors, that step to the big leagues is the biggest step that you're ever going to make. But we're going to evaluate everything and then apply as much pressure on them as possible. This is not an easy, I guess an easy level to conquer just because you do well in the minors. But I hope they put all kinds of pressure on us at opening day. But there's a lot that has to happen between now and then before, we have to, necessarily make a firm decision.
Al, you mentioned pitching. Do you view adding an established starter to go with your young guys as a priority this offseason?
I would say that an established starter would be a necessity, yes.
Why is that?
Well, we were already, I know you guys think about maybe the starting rotation is not the most important thing. You look at Tampa and all that, but usually, there's 2 ways of building a pitching staff. One is if you have really good established starters that can go 5, 6+ innings, that really is a big plus for you. If you don't have that, then you're going to have to mix and match more of your bullpen, and obviously these guys did a great job in that too. So I would say that if you can add an established starter that can give you those type of innings, then that would be a big plus for us. If we can't, for whatever reason, then again we're going to have to mix and match more often. So if we can come in and sign a good established starter to be part of that rotation, I think it's a big plus. We can't guarantee that because I don't know how the market's going to play out. But if we don't, then we're going to have to go in a different direction and probably mix and match guys in that rotation and mix and match more of the relievers. It'll be a bigger challenge, obviously.
One guy who probably didn't have the type of year you might want is Willie Castro. What did you make of his season and kind of how he fits in going forward?
Yeah, Willie Castro, obviously we feel he's got a lot of physical ability. The guy has power. He runs very well. We feel that he's got all the athletic ability and the tools to be a good player. He hasn't put it all together yet. Obviously, the hitting hasn't come around. It still makes probably too many errors for our liking. But he's still young enough. He's still athletic enough. He's got the tools to work with, and so he's still a work in progress at this point.
You've talked a lot about, free agency isn't the only way you can improve your team. You've talked about trades. Are you at the point in the organization, the depth of the organization, where you can consider trading prospects for an established player, or is it still?
I'm still very sensitive to that in trading prospects for established players. I've said this all along, and in my conversations with AJ when we hired AJ was, we're not looking for a quick win and we're out. We're looking to sustain this. If you've paid attention, we've kind of overhauling our minor league system right now, and what I would call phase 2, and that is a plan for this team and this organization to be sustainable and successful for years to come. but most importantly, that includes players. And so we have to be very careful on that. And so, well, I'm not going to rule it out. Anything that makes sense, obviously, we're going to look at it. And if there's a trade to be made, we will. But I'll be very sensitive to be able to, to trade guys that we feel can be part of this winning organization in the future.
Last thing for me, just on Boyd, just some clarity on how the mechanics work of his situation. He's under contract. You need to either tender or non-tender. He's in that situation, right? And how difficult is that?
And I'm not going to get into it at this point because there is a decision to be made on our part, and eventually there'll be a decision to be made on his part. If that gets to that point. So it's going to be kind of a two-way thing here for us. If we do go forward in that sense, then he's going to have to make a decision whether it's going to be good enough for him too. So at this point, I'll leave it at that because obviously we haven't got into it yet, and we're not going to make any more comments on it.
Probably a question for both of you guys, but you talked a lot about the young pitching. How do you guys feel this year about the developments of Mize and Manning and Skubal?
Well, I thought it went great. If you want to elaborate.
Yeah, so it's starting pitching is very important to me, to us, to winning, and when you look at the innings that are logged around the league, like the successful teams are going to have a lot of innings logged by the rotation. I mean, we can build it a lot of different ways, and you can run any particular game any way you want. We tried to show that. We did pretty creative with how we did it this year. But the game starts with the starting pitcher, and the tone is set. The ball is in his hands first, and when we were good this season, and the majority of the season that we were good, it's because we got out of the gate pretty well. We had pretty good starting pitching, and that started with various people, and then it's centered around Casey and Derrick and Matt. The essence of their development, they're all different. I mean, I know we group them together, but they handle things differently. They're different personalities. They're different people. What they have in common is this intensity that I asked, that Chris Fetter asked, that Juan. We all want our starting pitcher to be a guy, to be the guy that it's whether you look on the app or you look in the newspaper or you look at the matchup, and we're like, we have a chance to win from the minute that we wake up because of the guy that we're rolling out there to start the game. They're working on different things. They're not a finished product. When they're going well, they're not a finished product. When they scuffled, they're not a finished product. They're navigating the early parts of their career and really doing it quite well. When I look at where this team can be, it's going to center around this rotation and how we attack each game.
And then just a question for Al too. How rewarding was this year for you, considering you had gone through the rebuild, and there's been a lot of questions about decisions that you made from the outside. I mean, how nice was this for you?
Well, obviously we're happy with the progress, but we're not there yet. We won't stop, and we won't be happy until we get to the World Series and win it. But the progress is, it's a tough process, and it's not an easy process, and it's not by any means a quick fix. And sure, you're going to make mistakes along the way. And a lot of you guys that were around here for the last few years, there's circumstances to every trade and why you're able to get the return that you would like, which is not always possible. So we faced a lot of tough situations going into this rebuild, which is every rebuild is different in every organization for a lot of different reasons. And so going what I personally went through, I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but at the end of the day, I signed up for it. I knew what it was, and I had been through it before, more than once. So I went in it with eyes wide open, and so at this point, yeah, it's somewhat satisfying to get here, but there's a long way to go, and we've acknowledged that, and so. By no means am I satisfied at all. As a matter of fact, what I am is more motivated now because you can see that light at the end of the tunnel, and these next couple of steps, the next year or two, will obviously are very important for our major league club as far as getting back to the playoffs and bringing back our fans with the optimism that we have a chance. And then also the longer term is, like I mentioned, the really long-term goal of sustainability for years to come. I don't want this to be a situation, an organization where years from now, when I retire, oh yeah, Al went out there, we took him to the World Series and it's over. No, when I'm long gone, I want you guys to see, oh man, that guy built it up for a long time, and it's still going.
Back to your left. Perfectly tees up the next step. Now I know one off-season prize can't fix everything and can't bring you guys to your ultimate goal, but it's been a while since we've been here on a snowy, December, January day, and you're presenting a jersey to your big prize. For both of you, how thrilling is that next step now to know that you can add 1, 2, 3 big pieces this off-season?
Well, again, I'm very thankful to our owner, Chris Illich. He's been very supportive from day one. The tough, few years of the rebuild and all the negative things that came with it, he had to endure it himself. So, but again, when he hired me to do the job, his eyes were fully wide open too. And so he's been very supportive, so I'm very thankful for that. And then now I'm very thankful for that. He's supporting all of our new ideas in player development and scouting and analytics, and investing money on the infrastructure, which, not every organization is open to do that as much as he has. So that you have to be very thankful for. And now at the major league level, AJ and I have sat down with Chris on a couple of occasions and discussed this offseason and going into the future in the next couple of years. And obviously, like he mentioned, the resources will be there. But I will caution you, all right, and that this is not going to be, spending like a drunken sailor, to those type of comments. It's going to be this is going to be a very measured process, and we're going to make sure that whatever decisions we make, free agency wise, that it doesn't sink this organization for years to come, but it builds this organization for years to come.
Yeah, from my perspective, it's exciting time to be a Tiger. I think, there's a lot of jerseys that we could hold up here on this same podium, and in between Al and I, and hopefully Chris would be here, and we see that as a success. Our goal on the field was to make this a desirable place and show the arrow pointing in the right direction. But there's a number of guys that can help us. We need help. I mean, we do. We need to get better. We need help internally. It's not a sort of a one fix. And I know there's going to be a lot of attention on different parts. And just the fact that it's possible, I think we're in a good place on this date in time. Where it leads to how you build a team that can contend and compete and get into the playoffs, the options are really endless, especially when you talk about trades in the market and stuff like that. So as the manager, you want a chance to tell your team that we have a chance. Obviously, we got a lot of work to do between the next time that I address the team. But I know the belief that exists in the clubhouse, the last meeting that we had, and the excitement that everybody's going home with, knowing that the expectations are only going to increase from here.
Thank you.
I guess this is first for you, AJ, and maybe Al can answer it to speak to it. I know that you said the next goal is 500. To what extent is playoffs, though, the expectation for next season wrapped into that, or is it too soon? I know you want it, but
Sure.
in reality, with what can take place this offseason?
Well, I don't know. That's on the front end of the offseason. I don't know until we know exactly what team we're going to break camp with, sort of what the odds are. That's going to be up for you guys to write about and fans to speculate about. My job is not to worry about that today. My job is to get us, find areas to get us better, and I could rattle off a dozen areas, right now. So I know everybody wants to set a lofty goal. Everybody wants to speak to these high-end expectations, and if we have a team that's built for that, then we're going to welcome them, and we're going to go try to win today's game. That doesn't change a thing. What to speculate now based on no team? I mean, there's like 10 teams aren't even done playing yet, so they don't even know where they're going to be going into next season. It's fun. It's exciting. You want to give you guys some bulletin board material to put out there and say that I'm declaring we're going to be a playoff team, but I'd like to meet my team again before I talk about where we're going to be next October.
It's a great comment.
When you became GM, you inherited some big long-term contracts that made the process over the last several years a lot more difficult, and then there were some long-term deals that just didn't work out. Does that make you kind of gun-shy a little bit about going and pursuing a player that's going to require that kind of deal, knowing that if it doesn't work out, it can really have lasting consequences?
No, you can't have that fear factor at all when you make these decisions. If you do, then I'm in the wrong position. You have to, just like him. I mean, he makes decisions, in a game where if he's afraid to make a decision because it's going to blow up in his face, then I hired the wrong guy. So no, absolutely not. The thing is, we have to be very measured. We have to, calculate everything, the pros and cons of everything, and at the end of the day, it comes to the player. You have to believe in the player in a lot of different areas before you make that determination. So, as far as the amount, the length of contract, all that stuff, there's a lot of different reasons for doing certain things and good reasons for not doing certain things. So we'll make that determination as we go. But there is definitely no fear factor here.
AJ, you built a staff where people promptly came and poached it.
Yeah.
What are your plans there? Will there be changes?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
So I first off, this coaching staff did a tremendous job of staying, through everything this season. I can't thank them enough. I did thank them for their effort. Obviously, there's everybody came here. A couple carryover guys from last year, and the guys that came here to make a difference. And I think this group did everything they could for the players. We did get poached early. I did not see that coming, especially from the college ranks. Back to back, losing Jose Cruz Jr. and Chip Hale, and yet we brought up Mike Hessman and Kamara Barti, and really seamlessly transitioned into the rest of the season. We've informed the staff that they will be coming back, with the exception of KB at first base. I'm going to leave open into a process of interviews. He's being one of them. Given that the beginning, in the middle of the season, when you bring somebody up, there's always the question of what it can lead to, and I said on the front end to both Hess and KB that there were no guarantees. Al and I both did, and so. It is tough to not just be able to roll right into next season, especially for KB. He did a nice job, but he's a part of the interview process that we're going to have at first base. But everybody else in its entirety will be back.
Al, you mentioned earlier.
It's funny that you mentioned about poaching, because Chris Federer and Gabe Ribas were college coaches, so they were poached by the major league guys, and now the colleges are poaching major league players. So it's kind of back and forth though.
You mentioned overhauling the minor league system. Obviously, you have a new person in charge. What's your vision there of the changes you want to implement?
Well, just the very basics is a different style of teaching. Okay, we have more technology now in analytics, so there's more scientific ways of doing it. The people that we're trying to bring into the organization now a little bit more progressively minded and using that information. Traditionally speaking, you had, let's say, a good example, a pitching coach at, let's say, at the AA level, and that person would be, guiding the way, right? And then you'd have a rover coming around. We have to have people teaching how to teach, because now with the new information, the new technology, the average coach that maybe is not too accustomed to that has to be taught a new way. So that is really kind of the basics that I can tell you as far as how we move forward on this. And so the technology that we're adding at every ballpark, the enhanced Hall guy system that has it basically follows the biomechanics of every player on the field, where it can gives us information on how to use it to better that player, or maybe even prevent injuries. So it's advanced technology, it's advanced analytics, and so we're trying to bring in new people that have a better understanding of it, that can teach it, so that our entire player development system, then from top to bottom, is running on the same wheel. A lot of it is driven from a pitching perspective. A guy like Gabe Rivas is a very similar hire to Chris Fetter. And you'll see a lot of initiatives from Chris Fetter going down to a guy like Gabe Rivas, and then all through the minor league system, all the way down to the Dominican Summer League. And the same thing would be in our as far as our hitting structure, where Kenny Graham has done an excellent job at the minor league level, and then you'll see Cooley obviously, leading the way as far as how we're going to teach all the way down. So that kind of gives you a little basic perspective of where we're heading.
For Al and AJ, if possible, obviously you've developed some momentum. You can detect it in the fans and the media and what they're looking for. Do you feel at all, I don't know, pressure to make a quote-unquote splash or splashes this offseason? And where before we would wonder, was Christopher Ilitch ready to spend? Do you now think at all that he's going to push you to make a splash? Like that's something that he wants to add to?
I don't want to call it, obviously when you say a big splash, I guess that's a big thing now going into the off season. We're going to make a big splash. Our big splash is going to be wins and losses, or should I say just wins, all right? That's the big splash that I'm looking forward to. More wins during the regular season, getting to the playoffs. I want to make the big splash during the season with wins, all right, and getting to the playoffs. How that happens, okay, there's a lot of different ways. So I'm not going to sit here and say we're going to make a big splash or I want to make a big splash because we're going to sign so-and-so or we're going to go out. I'm not going to say that. That's not going to happen. We're going to go out there and try to make this team better. I said we're going to make a push to try to make this team better for next season, and we'll do that every year that we go into it. Sometimes you don't have to make a big splash. Sometimes a big splash turns out wrong for you, and so going back in my first comment, there's no fear factor in signing a big contract, but at the same time, we're not looking at it as, we have to make a big splash. It's about making the right decisions to make this team a winning team, and that's the way we're looking at it.
Yeah, so pressure to me, that's a word I love, and I love applying it to our own players, to the opponent. I feel pressure every night, and I love that. I think the interesting part of all of this is all we can really sit up here and say is that we have a chance and that's possible. We can't accurately predict anything, whatever a big splash is. I would tell you that if you look back at what Robbie Grossman did this year, that's a pretty big splash. So I know what everybody wants to hear and how they want to talk about the top end of the market, and if that happens, I'll be the first one up here holding this jersey and loving life, and I'll kiss him on the cheek in front of all you people. Unless neither of us have these coughing like that. But I think we have to understand what it takes to win. It doesn't take a big splash to win. A big splash would help, but it's a marriage that has to be created in so many different ways, and it's a complicated process, and it's not a end all be all. Is it possible? Sure. I think we've all talked like that, and everybody, the hidden thing in the room is, are we going to sign this big dude? Maybe. But if we don't, do you think Robbie Grossman was a big splash? I do. Do I think that
Akil Baddoo was a big splash?
Akil Baddoo was a big splash? I do. I agree. It's a great call. Are big prospects going to be a big splash? Yeah, maybe. We have to find a way to have a competitive advantage at more positions than we have right now. We do not have the wins right now to sort of push to push on a nightly basis. We're trying to maximize that. Where that's going to come from, I hate that you guys are going to have patience, but I'm going to put pressure on you by telling you just be patient with what we're trying to do, and the goal is the journey. If we can get somebody that can drive us there 100 miles an hour, then I'll hop in the seat and we'll drive it. If not, then we're going to have to find other ways to get to 90 plus wins. That's what we do.
Hey guys, back here. I guess to build off that, when you think about who you might want to reach out to this offseason, whether it's a shortstop, pitchers, otherwise, how clear are you on what that list looks like for targets, and how eager are you to begin those conversations?
Well, I can very simply tell you that we're going to look at everything. We're not going to target one player. We have to look at the whole list. of free agents, and we'll be in contact with everybody, and then we'll see where that leads us. So to say here we're targeting one guy, no, we have to have a wide net, and really that's the only way to approach it, because I can't. If you target one guy, you can't be guaranteed you're going to get that guy. So you got to make sure that you have a wide net and see where it takes you.
Yeah, AJ. Obviously, with what you guys have done, the progress you've made has given the town a lot of hope. With that's going to come, like you said, you haven't met your team yet. A lot of variables, but there's going to be heightened expectations, heightened pressure. This town can be tough on the Tigers when there's expectations. How are you going to manage those expectations? Yeah, you can tell them now. Or talk to Jim. How are you going to manage those expectations and that added pressure for that team, especially when you bring guys up like Torque and Green? There's going to be tons of expectations on them.
Well, it's not my first time with expectations. That is one thing I've got is experience. 5 playoff teams, a couple World Series will give you some perspective on showing up the next spring training. Obviously and in my experience, you got to hit it head on and just try to win the day's game. I mean, this is not something I'm putting in place to just for a cute little story in 2021. I mean, I want this identity of this team, this how we apply pressure, how we attack the day, how we prepare. Like, this was a foundation that we poured that's going to be exactly, you're going to hear the same stuff from me next year on how we manage our day-to-day expectation to win. That doesn't change. The noise around you changes a little bit. The hype around you changes. Every time we play the White Sox, there's going to be a nice little free article for you guys to write on or talk about on TV on this rivalry that's starting to grow. All that's really cool, but it doesn't change the fact that the competition on the field, you got to be 1 run better or more than your opponent. So if we get too far outside this and the hype gets talked about and the emotions go up and down throughout this whole offseason, you might get this guy, you might not get that guy, this trade was rumored, this signing is possible. Man, that doesn't do anything for the competition. And I've been there, I've done it, I've lived it. I got a bench coach who's been in a couple World Series. I got staff members all across the board that have been in this environment. I got veteran players already on this team that keep everybody's head where their feet are. I mean, look, we're going to find a way to keep all that stuff out, whether it's hype on getting better or hype on making the playoffs. Like, tough town, like, try being a manager of any of these 30 teams, man. It is not it's not welcome on, losses aren't welcome anywhere. I don't care if you're projected to be a last place team or you have playoff aspirations. You got to talk less and do more on the field. We got to win more games, and we have to take the responsibility with that, on a day-to-day basis.
Just to follow up, Al, have you had conversations with AJ about how this town can be when there are playoff expectations and just on a day-to-day basis when there's a losing streak? And I think Jim Lingland talked about little kids cussing him out when he was driving home.
Yeah, no, we've talked about it before I hired him. I mean, we talked about it. AJ, remember, was a player here too, and so he knows he's here with eyes wide open. Believe me, he understands the excitement that could also be here. There's pressure. I remember, I was here with Jim Leland, and I remember how really, he was scrutinized pretty bad. I mean, and now of course he's a hometown hero too. After all these years, and so no, AJ knows this very well. But I don't think we're looking at this as pressure of expectation and how the town could turn on you. I think we're looking at this as excitement, because putting together a good team and the excitement or the expectation of winning more baseball games creates excitement. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing this stadium full of people cheering for the team. And if we struggle along the way and people get angry, hey, that's part of the process. But at least they care. And I want them in the stadium either, booing us or cheering for us, one way or the other. All right, hopefully a lot more cheering than booing, but the expectation is there. That's great. The pressure is there. That's why we signed up for this stuff. Otherwise, why even try? So for me and for AJ, and I know our players, they're excited for the future. They want to see this stadium full of people cheering for us. And obviously that's going to be more motivation here for the players to go out there and do their best. And I think you saw it this year where our coaching staff did a tremendous job. I think the type of players that we brought into the organization at this point are the type of guys that are not going to just, kick it in. They're gonna play to the last out. They're gonna give you their all. And I thought we played an exciting brand of baseball, and that's just the first step, in building this up. So there's the pressure's nothing. It's more of the excitement of the expectation more than the pressure of it.
Anybody else?
I imagine there are a lot of other teams that will be in the same situation, but how much do you guys want or need some certainty in terms of next year's CBA and the rules you'll be operating under before or as you figure out how to proceed for next year?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because obviously, once the World Series is over, that you can start talking to players and agents. 5 days after is when you can start negotiating, but that's going to be a window of between then and let's say December 1st. Okay, so you get as much as you can done within that period of time, and then if there's an agreement and things go on as normal, that's fantastic, and you keep on working. If it doesn't, then we have to make an adjustment at the time. But you just have to proceed as if things are going to be fine, and then if something does happen, then you have to make an adjustment at that point.
Al, you mentioned starting pitching being a necessity as far as the free agent market or acquiring someone. But what about the bullpen? I think it's been 5 years since you guys have signed a reliever to a major league contract. And understandably, when the team is rebuilding, I know that's not a focus. But now, a potential playoff team, does that bullpen get more scrutiny? And would you consider signing a veteran at that spot?
Well, yeah, I guess you can't rule it out. Having a really good bullpen piece added is always going to be a help. But I have to say that I think Chris Vetter and AJ done a tremendous job with our bullpen. We've got a guy in Gregory Soto that we believe can be a closer for the next several years. And obviously, you talk about a splash. You get a guy like Cisnero, right? That came out of nowhere, and I mean, he led the team in innings pitched and did an outstanding job in a variety of roles. You have Alex Lang coming on really strong here at the end, which when we made that trade, we felt that he wasn't going to be a starter. He was drafted as a starter. We felt that he's going to be a good back end of the guy, bullpen guy, and these guys have developed that in him, and we feel confident there. You got a guy like Jason Foley that if we can get him to believe himself a little bit more, he's got the kind of stuff that can pitch also in those late innings. So we've got the makings of a pretty darn good bullpen, and I think you've seen that this year. And as we all know, bullpens can tend to go up and down, so you got to be very careful on how you project that going into next season. But I got to say that the work that they've done with our bullpen has really been stellar, and the guys have reacted positively, and I feel pretty good about our bullpen going into next year. But to your point, if there is a right fit, you can't rule it out.
Okay, I'll say it. Gregory Soto's our closer, but he might pitch the 7th, the 8th, or the 9th, and sometimes the 6th. Okay? So there, I said it. You can go with it. First tweet wins. That's all. Got it.
On the injury front, just doubling back on, did you guys get any news on Derrick Hill and what his next step is?
Yeah, no, he had knee surgery here, I think today, or scheduled maybe tomorrow, out in California, just to clean up. It's, I believe it's his meniscus. So he's going to be fine. He's going to do fine. Everything was very positive. But yet another surgery that we'll have to monitor throughout the offseason. Doug Teeter's going to be pretty busy.
Can I just make one more comment? Because going back to the bullpen, let's just say this winter, if we don't sign a bullpen guy, that doesn't mean that next year at the trading deadline we can't trade for a guy in the because at that point, because of either injury or a guy just didn't pitch as well as the year before, you can make that adjustment then too. So obviously we have to be very flexible and just be open to whatever opportunities arise, whether it be this winter or at the trading deadline or anywhere in between.
And, okay.
Hey, AJ, even in Houston, you had several different catchers throughout your time there. Just why is that such a hard position to find stability at, and how important is it to you?
Yeah, so when you look at, winning teams, you need to have a guy back there who knows, number one, that defense is a priority, and number two, knows how to guide a pitching staff through a game and then through a season. When injuries, number one, it's hard to keep stability back there. What Salvador Perez did this year in Kansas City was remarkable, but he also got to DH. He's laughing because of what he did against us, but what he had to, he DH'd a little bit. You look at JT Realmuto in Philly, like what he's had to do, and he starts moving around. Like it's hard to keep that stability behind the plate. It's for me, like one of the things that Jake did, that Eric did, Dustin at the end, under my watch as a manager and JP here, we prioritize that game planning so much. We ask so much out of them that, maybe that creates a little bit of the mental anguish that Eric Haas went through towards the end of the year. Maybe that creates a little bit of the disconnect that we had at the, different times of my time in Houston or sometimes in here, where the number one priority is catch a winner. That if you look at teams that are good, they have that makeup behind the plate. The offensive production is going to be, secondary, and certainly there's exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, the teams that have won, and I don't mean necessarily even won the World Series, but just won consistently, have a stability in how they prepare and a stability in how they apply it to the game plan. That is second to none. And that'll be a focus here moving forward. It's why I talked about Jake the way I did at the beginning of the season. It's why we valued, what Haas and Dustin did at the end.
Okay, that's all we got time for. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.